Welcome to an Act 4 media review. My name is Gabe, and I'm joined again with my friend, Misael.
Hello, everyone. I'm glad to be back. As you probably
You have been gone for a while.
or knew, I was on a little summer trip vacation.
You ditched me.
I ditched you for
But
a month and a half.
because we pre-recorded, you were here for like 4 of those.
Yeah.
Like, you were over there, but you've been here. You've been on the pod.
We planned this out like, all right, I'm going to leave. We have to pre-record some of these, leave them out. But
I
anyway.
had it all figured out.
Exactly. We had a plan.
So today, we're going to be recording a couple things here.
Right.
It's Barbenheimer weekend.
Barbenheimer.
And first off, in this Barbenheimer series, we're doing Oppenheimer, which we saw last night. Got really tired. Woke up this morning, saw Barbie, took a nap. Now we're ready.
Yep.
So first, what we're going to do is a spoiler-free section, which is just really quick, 3 to 5 minutes, just general thoughts. Give a ranking, any critiques if we do have them. And from there, spoiler section. It's Barbenheimer weekend, baby. Let's get some likes. Let's get some subscriptions. Let's get some shares.
Let's get started.
Let's get started. So, Oppenheimer, directed by legendary director Christopher Nolan.
Yes, sir.
My friend. We haven't talked about it yet, but I'm pretty sure you liked it, but let me know what you think.
Overall, I think the movie was great. I enjoyed it, and I think you could tell from my expressions, from my movements and everything.
Your constant nods. I just saw in my peripherals, just your nods of approval.
You know, I know a lot of the science behind it, so I was kind of just like, oh, like, okay, they're talking about this, they're talking about that.
All the numbers, the physics.
And stuff. And I was like, oh, you know, like I would nod to me remembering learning that or kind of going over it either in class or just reading about it. So that part was really enjoyable for me. However, the movie was really loud. Incredibly loud. And we did mention it once, like Nolan movies, his movies
the sound mixing.
Like, the sound mixing is weird. The dialogue and when the actors they're talking, they're very like low, almost whispering. And then the action comes on and it's like freaking loud. This one was like a notch further than that. And
you thought it was even worse?
I think so.
Okay.
And that bothered me.
Because I've seen a lot of people saying that this was a step in the right direction, that he did it better this time around. But to me, it was like the same, where sometimes when they were speaking, like you had to really focus. Like you're just like, all right, just laser focus on trying to hear.
Right.
I don't know if you can open your ears, but that's what I was trying to do, you know? But it's still like, yeah, in the beginning, especially with all these names and everything being thrown at you, I definitely hear that.
It is a movie intense in dialogue and, you know, just constantly talking, and you really have to kind of either already like the kind of movie or just have really good attention span, I feel, because they dump a lot of information on you.
Oh, yeah. And I'll throw it back to you, but just really quick while we're on that.
Right.
Myself, I am aware of this great moment in human history.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I know what happened, but I don't know, like, the minutia of it. I don't know all the names and stuff like that. If anything, Christopher Nolan just educated me more than the public school system has. Maybe if Nolan just directs all of history.
All the history moments.
Everything. All of history.
Hey, 3 letters. JFK.
JFK, the sequel, baby. We got that Marvel tease at the end. That's not a spoiler, by the way. No. It's okay. JFK is a real man. Spoiler, he dies.
But anyway,
where were we?
Sorry, we went on like a
tangent.
Tangent. So I said what my kind of general thought of the movie. Let's hear yours.
Right. But working off of what I was saying, I'm not like a history buff. Right. Not that you have to be to know your history,
exactly.
But all those names and job titles and everything just being thrown at you is a lot if you're not already familiar.
Right.
But we were talking before about how I don't think you should be a history buff or know your history for a movie to work. Because at the end of the day, this is a movie.
But it does add,
absolutely, because it would definitely help with that first and second act with all these characters where every actor in the world was popping up every 5 minutes.
Like, what?
It's like, who? Wait. Yeah. But I felt like he did do a good job of educating me on not just like the history, but the names and like the titles and what their role was.
Give you context.
Yeah, because at first I'd be confused and I'd be like, oh well, we're moving on. And then I'd be like, oh, okay, so that's their role.
And
like
that's the thing, it's like this movie is fast paced.
Oh yeah.
And like
surprisingly, it's 3 hours.
It gives you a lot of information, a lot of stuff constantly just throwing at you.
And so now we're on my portion of this. Yeah, I think this movie is incredible. Like technically incredible. From everything from what it looks like, just direction, just like the opening sequence, when you're seeing all the text and everything. I'm just like, oh, here we go. It's like this is gonna hit.
Yeah.
Actors are incredible.
All of them.
Yeah. That's not a bad performance. Which is there ever in a Christopher Nolan movie?
No,
there's not.
So far, no. I can't think of any. I mean, Cillian Murphy, take a bow. He was incredible in this. Like, it really did feel like he was someone else. Because normally, I'd use that comment for someone who's like in, like, they like the Joker, for example. Heath Ledger, like, he completely looks different. Steve Carell in Foxcatcher, like, same thing. He's like looks different. Now he looks like Cillian Murphy, but it doesn't feel like Cillian Murphy, which I guess is acting. I think he does a great job, like, portraying the emotions that he's going through.
Right. Like a little dead inside,
like,
very anxious.
You can just feel it, you could just feel what this man is going through, like some of the emotions that he's doing now. So he does that very well. And even then, like, I'll just save it because it kind of goes into spoilers. So,
okay.
All in all, great performance.
So just general thoughts. I did really like it. I don't know if I loved it. Like, I love the experience of it. That's what I was going to mention. As a movie-going experience.
Oh, yeah, it was great.
It was cinema. Which we expected. Right?
Like, I mean, that's what we were going for. That's what we were all hoping for, right?
But as a Gabe movie, like, the stuff that I like, especially what I like from Nolan, like, you think about his previous movies where he, there's a guy trying to figure out, a mystery and he has short-term memory loss.
We'll get into those.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. By the way, we're going to rank all the Christopher Nolan movies as well. That should be going up this Friday. I'm trying to like get the timing right of when this is going to drop.
It's coming soon.
It'll be this Friday.
It's coming soon.
By the time you listen to this, it'll be this Friday.
Okay.
How about that?
Okay.
But yeah, he has all these incredible concepts and ideas and story, like how he plays with stories. Man, this guy cannot tell a linear story to save his life. Everything the time and everything has to be taking place.
This man just likes messing shuffled with time.
Yeah, like he loves it.
Linear time doesn't work for him.
It's boring for him. And it goes to show how his mind works too.
Yeah, it's very complex.
Yeah. So anyway, he has all these complex stories, Inception, Interstellar, like, and then this one is like it's just not like a history report, because the way that he did this movie was, again, we've talked about this, is like the colored versions are subjective, or the colored scenes are subjective. This is what he said, and then the black and white ones are objective. Like, those are historically like 100% accurate.
So the way I like to see it, and you can kind of notice that when we see the color change or whatever. No, when it's actual color, we're actually seeing it in his point of view. We're actually seeing it through his eyes.
Through Oppenheimer's eyes.
Okay. And when it's in black and white, we're seeing it outside his views, whether it's Robert Downey Jr.'s or somebody else's. And I think that's a lot easier to say than and we see it at the end.
Right. Okay.
Einstein or whatever. Yeah.
Now we're getting dangerously close to spoilers, so we'll go into that in just a moment. But final thoughts, spoiler free. I'm not going to ask, do you recommend this? Because clearly we both really like this movie. But who do you recommend it to?
I would say it's the people that are really into history would definitely enjoy it, even if they're not the type of people that will like a dialogue-heavy movie that requires a lot of thinking.
Right.
I think they'll still enjoy it, but overall, it's intended for people that like those kinds of movies, that they could sit through a 3-hour-long movie that is just extracting information and just listening. If you're not that kind of person, you're not gonna like it. I'm saying.
Well,
that
I mean,
right
I'm
now.
not.
It's
like
not.
it.
No, it's not.
But
I think there might be a misconception that it's an action movie, and it's not.
okay.
You know.
I mean, if you got that from the trailer,
well, I'm just saying in general.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
like there could be. I'm not saying there is, but there could be.
I'm gonna
Going based off of like Nolan's past films and what we're seeing with the whole like atomic bomb
and
stuff.
that's another. Just very quickly, that's the thing with Nolan is like we've gotten to the point where with him,
right.
I mean, we've been there, but he's able to do whatever the hell he wants, and he's able to pack up theaters. You know, like we went Friday. IMAX,
you know what, guys?
give
me an A-bomb real quick. I need it for a movie.
yeah.
The military. Sure, man. Here you go. Do whatever you want.
Thanks. You want another one?
Give me a hydrogen bomb.
They considered it. Imagine.
Anyway.
But yeah, very quickly, I would recommend it just to. I feel like the cinema, like the movie buffs, or you know, a word I hate, cinephiles. You know that they call movie buffs that?
I've never heard of that before.
Like people like to call themselves that, cinephiles.
Cinephile. That's weird.
That's weird. I don't like that.
It sounds weird.
It sounds like that other word. You know what I'm talking about. What are you doing in those movies?
You know, however, let's say someone wants to get into that kind of movie. This is it.
I feel like if you want to get into movies, just in general, I feel like if you just recommend Christopher Nolan's discography or whatever you want to call it, filmography,
right?
I think you would understand. And I feel like you got to earn your way to Oppenheimer. By the time you get to Oppenheimer,
definitely.
you'll be like, cinema. So I guess I besides like film buffs, cinephiles, whatever you want to call yourself.
And by the way, real quick, sorry, there are other great actors too. I mean, the directors that have also.
Absolutely.
You know, so
absolutely.
We're not just praising Nolan here.
But it's Nolan's day, so you know what?
Nolan.
Forget about Martin Scorsese. Forget about Spielberg. Today is about Nolan and Barbie.
Okay.
So,
stand that line.
So yeah, I think we've cleared it up who we would recommend it to. So 1 through 10, what's your rating?
9.
9. Okay. I was gonna go 8, and that's on the Gabe scale. That's on your scale. Right. Two different scales.
We say this all the time. Like we just freshly watched it. It'll change again.
Yeah, I feel like this would definitely benefit from a second viewing.
Yeah.
I don't want to do that right now because one, it was long, and two, it was not like I'm so emotionally drained or anything like that. But it's just like it is a journey.
Heavy.
It is heavy. And I think that's a good time to go into spoilers. So I was going to start saying some stuff. So spoiler filled section now. We're going to give them a minute to get out of here. I don't know. Hit one of those buttons. See what happens.
Salute. Let's do.
Let's see if you remember which one. I think.
My bad. Not that one.
Not that one. Yeah.
I loaded up with alcohol, more specifically vodka, whiskey, beer, tequila, more beer, more vodka,
what?
more whiskey,
what?
More beer.
What?
I like how he finishes that. And more beer.
More beer.
All right. Spoiler filled section. I want to throw it to you first. Anything you want. You can start at the
Throw
end.
it at me.
No, what's up to you? I'm trying to throw it at you. Middle and favorite characters, favorite moments, whatever you want. Any questions you have for me, go wherever you want. First thought. Don't even think about it. First thought.
Cillian Murphy, you know, and the reason why I go back to this is because he is one of my favorite actors.
Right.
You know this. We talked about him a lot. And I told you, like, before I think like the first teaser came out, I told you, I'm like, Cillian Murphy is cooking up that Oscar.
And that was going to be one of my questions to you, like for the end. But since you brought it up now, do you think he's at least going to get nominated?
I think if he doesn't get nominated,
we're going to boycott the Oscars.
We're going to boycott the Oscars or something. I don't know. Like,
did you even watch last year?
No.
Your opinion means nothing to them.
I know, huh?
Your viewership means nothing.
But kind of going off of what I said earlier about him just like being like he was able to transmit the emotions and feelings of this character so well. Excuse me. He
this beer is really gassy.
It is. I don't know what's going on. I'm sorry, guys.
Sorry for audio listeners. I think YouTube, whatever, Spotify listeners that have the video can see that we're like burping off to the side right here,
drinking beer.
Audio listeners are like, why are they going quiet so often? And we have a couple. We got a nice sizable Spotify audience of like 8 people. So you 8 people, sorry about that.
Yeah, sorry about that.
But go ahead, Cillian Murphy.
Did awesome
talking about how incredible he is.
Yeah.
Is there any scene specifically that you want to talk about?
The scene. And you might be thinking it.
Okay, I think I was.
It's after they dropped the bombs on Japan, Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and he already knows by now that he's like we created like a weapon of mass destruction, and literally it could potentially destroy the freaking world.
Yep.
So by now, he's already having issues with that. He's struggling with that. And again, you feel it. Like he's able to portray that onto you so well that you know that he's going through it.
Right.
Like he feels incredibly guilty. And he was already having doubts before they even finished the bomb. He was like, wow, like he's already questioning.
It was after they finished making it when he started,
like,
talking about
his morally change. Like
right.
His moral changes.
He's like, okay, well, we did it now. Like, it's almost like he did it for science.
Mm-hmm.
And then after the science was complete, because it's like, okay, now it's time to start thinking about whether or not we should have made it.
Yeah, so it shows that he was an ambitious man wanting to make that discovery, and then it wasn't until like those questions were already they were lingering, right? So then until it was actually finished, he was like, "Oh shit!" Like,
what did I do?
Like, what did we do?
And that, again, that like as you're mentioning, that was before the bomb even dropped.
Yeah, before the bomb even dropped. So then, once all that happens,
very quick. By the way, they were like Amazon Prime with that shit. Like they made the bomb, and they're just like, go, shit's blowing up next week.
The military took it away so quick, and
both of them.
Like, both of them.
What is it? Fat Man and Little Brother or something?
Fat Man, Little Brother. Yeah.
Something like that, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Fat Man, Fat Boy. I think.
Fat Boy.
Fat Boy. I don't remember. It's something around that.
Fat Boy sounds
I forgot
right.
already. And so everyone is cheering on. Like, wow, we did it. And so for a little bit of context, they built a town right in Los Alamos, and that's
that I didn't know. By the way, I didn't know that.
Really. Yeah. So
I thought like from the trailer that they were building the town like to blow it up. I played too much Call of Duty Nuketown. Yeah. But go ahead.
So so that's where everyone was working at. So there was people, they weren't all scientists, but there was a big
family.
Family,
they brought all their families because they knew it would take years.
Then after President Truman came on the radio and said, "Hey, this is what happened. We bombed Japan." Everyone was patriotic. They were all cheering, right? And he's walking down the street, and he's like the reality hit him. He was like, "Oh shit, like what did we do?" So then later on that day, or later on after that scene,
they have the celebration.
They had the celebration where he had to give a little speech, and that's the scene that I'm like, that's like one of my favorite, right?
I think that's the best
walking
scene, yeah.
in, and everyone's stomping their feet, they're cheering on, and he's just
that's
like,
the noise that's in the trailer, like the dun. And they kept making that noise, but then when they revealed what it was, I was like, Nolan's a genius.
Yeah. So like he's already out of it, right? Like he's still just thinking about the weapon, and everyone's cheering on him like, wow, you did it, you made this huge achievement. And he goes behind the podium, and he's in front of the people, and he's trying to give the speech, but he can't think. All he is thinking of is the destruction that those bombs,
the ramifications
made,
of what he did,
and that's all that's on his mind, right? He starts to envision, like the people burning, their skin falling off, peeling off, while everyone is still cheering on him. And I think that's the best scene in the movie.
And all the things like visually, like all the effects that they're doing there, and like he did all this shit practically too, like how like it gets really bright and not in the interrogation scene, and I think they do it in this scene too, where it's like really bright, as you're mentioning, like the skin is peeling off like the people that are in the crowd, and how it gets like really quiet, like he's not even hearing them anymore.
Like,
when he's giving his speech, he's just saying words and watching their reaction, because he's not saying those words because he believes it, because he starts saying like, oh, and then we'll what is it like? We'll hit Germany too, or whatever.
So kind of to add to that part, you know, what that I wanted to come back to was that, you know, he's supposed to give this great speech, but he can't. So he's at loss of words, right? And he's just kind of saying whatever comes to his mind.
He's saying what they want to hear.
He's saying what they want to hear, and he's like, if only we could have dropped it on Germany, right?
Because, but even you right now are saying it with more passion than he was, because he was kind of just like, we could have done that to Germany too,
right?
And then everybody's everybody's freaking out,
because by then Germany, they had surrendered. Hitler had killed himself. So that was the other thing, you know, they didn't need to bomb Japan. They already said they have nowhere to go. They're gonna.
It was about power.
Yeah, just about power, just showing who has the bigger
cock.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, since we're already naturally going there, one of the questions I have for you is, do you think that they needed to show, or do you think that they should have showed Japan, like the bomb actually hitting? No. And the ramifications of that.
No, I think what they did was perfect, because that leaves it up to us, and it also shows how truly horrific and catastrophic that was, right? Because we grew up learning about this,
right?
We don't know the details, but we know how bad that was, right? Like how the impact it had on the world.
Or we do know what details they've told us, but
right.
But that's another thing I was going to mention too, is like in school they do, like, just in case we get any like, international viewers or whatever listeners, they do, at least for me, like they taught us like the negative impacts, and they were kind of like teaching us like in a questionable way of just like, hey, we did this, but do you think we should have? Like it was always like stuff like that where it's not like we did it.
Yeah,
it was always kind of like, even now, like that moral question is lingering, because you know, whether it was right or wrong, or whether that choice to bomb them was right or wrong. You know, like we did it. We did it, and it had a ripple effect, a chain reaction. And that last scene's incredible too, with Einstein, because he says it. He's just like, I mean, where were we now?
I want to lead to that. Like,
okay, you still want to finish up on that scene? Well. So after he gives that speech, he told them what they wanted to hear, and he's walking away.
No, not that. Like, you know, you asked another question. You know, like the whole whether they should have showed the bombings, right? And
okay,
again,
I went further back. I went back to square one.
So
I do want to go back to that though. So
soon after that, you know, the military is actually showing them images to the scientists, but we don't see them. We just see Oppenheimer's face, and I think there's some other scientists. I can't remember who it was, and they are describing the images, right? Like they're saying, oh, you know, like anyone within a mile radius got turned to dust.
I forgot about that. Yeah,
and you see, like, it gets progressively worse, and you see his face just getting more and more worse.
And they talk about some people, like from the radiation, you know, that they eventually died weeks later.
Right. So, you know, because of that, I feel like they did that perfectly, where like it left it up to us to kind of imagine how bad it was.
Yeah. And
it had a bigger effect, I feel, than just showing it.
I mean, ultimately, I think he did that because this movie is titled Oppenheimer.
Awesome.
I mean, that too. Ultimately, yes. Because like there's gonna be people in Japan watching this movie. Everybody likes Nolan. He's a worldwide name, and imagine if like they have to see that shit again.
Yeah. No.
But on top of that, this is titled Oppenheimer, and it is, you know, we're getting the information through his eyes. So we see how it affected the creator of the atom bomb. You know, the father of the atom bomb. So I think that worked because we saw how much it broke him And again, like I kind of like naturally want to go into like other things too, because after that, the whole third act is just dealing with what happened after, not just like emotionally what he's going through, but
other
politically.
Stuff. So that's the thing, right? This is also a politically heavy movie,
especially that third act.
Yeah, and that's,
which we'll talk about in a bit.
So, just kind of just a little bit of context, there was a lot of issues back then because one, at the same time that the U.S. or that the World War was happening, World War II, there was conflicts with Russia, right? With the Soviet Union, I should say. So there was all these worries that there could be Soviet spies, and there was one.
Right.
There was one.
Well, that's the thing with the whole colored version, because like he shows two things with the colored versions that like show like did it happen or did it not? For Florence, why am I forgetting her name?
Florence Pugh.
Florence Pugh. Yes, for Florence Pugh's character, they show her both kill herself and show her being killed. So it's almost like, hey, we don't know for sure what happened,
right? But
this is what could have happened. Like the only two possible things that could happen.
Right.
And then with that, like they announced that he's a spy, that one of the guys is a spy, but they do it in a way of just like, well, that's what they're telling Oppenheimer.
So the way I saw it was that the black and white, it was dealing a different timeline, which is the actual proceedings of the investigations leading up to that, and then the actual hearings about Soviet spies and whatnot. So, it's just the way he plays with his movies and time. It just goes back and forth, and it can be kind of confusing. But that's ultimately what I saw. It was him being prosecuted or kind of being accused of being a Soviet spy. And Robert Downey Jr.'s character, Louis Strauss, I think it is, or Strauss.
Oh, well, good thing we got Wikipedia.
Right. So
Louis Strauss.
So at the time, he was part of the like Atomic Energy Commission or something like that. And he wants to become part of the government somehow, right? But the way he wants to achieve that is, I think, by shooting down Oppenheimer and calling him a Soviet spy.
Right, trying to discredit him.
Just kind of discredit
going
him.
forward.
Right.
Like this is after the bomb drops, because he wants to discontinue the hydrogen bomb, which would be even worse, even bigger, even worse. And his argument is that, well, if we do it, the hydrogen bomb, then they're gonna do it, and then we're just gonna keep making bigger bombs, and we're just gonna go extinct. Which leads to it's a chain reaction. Leads to the Cold War, and here we are.
But anyway, you wanted to go back to
back to that first scene that we both think is incredible, because after he gives the speech and everything, like it doesn't just end there. He's walking away, and like he steps into a body, like a body that's already like stuff. So in a way, we kind of did see some stuff, but it's more. But from the movie perspective, it's what he thinks it is.
Like it's his imagination or what he's kind of seeing now from being traumatized.
So he steps on a body that's like just ash now,
kind of burnt.
Just burnt, and he steps like through the carcass, and then he goes through. Now this I didn't know, because there is a lot of him like in his head seeing stuff and thinking stuff, but we see it visually. And he's seeing people like crying. Like after he leaves, he sees people crying, sees people like throwing up sick. So in your interpretation, like when you saw it, is that straight up just like what happened? Like he was just actually seeing the effects of it?
I'm actually confused about that part, because I'm pretty sure the people that were crying together, I could have sworn they had just been like making out like a few seconds before.
There was people making out under the bleachers, and then he leaves.
It wasn't the same people. I could have sworn it was the same
people. From memory of this long ass movie, it was different people.
Okay, it probably was. To me, I don't know why I thought they were same.
But then he leaves the building too, and then there's people like there's a guy throwing up and everything. So
my first thought was he was just drunk. But again,
or just at least in like just seeing stuff.
Yeah, like maybe he was traumatized.
I was 50-50 on that, because at first I was like, is he still like in his head, or weird? Because that would have been more interesting if it in fact was true. Like everything he saw, everything we saw was true. So if like in this room everybody's cheering, but there are a few percent of people, a few people that do understand Like, it's not just Oppie.
Right.
It's not just Oppie that understands. It's like a couple people do see it as well.
Yeah. So kind of to go off on that is, he wasn't the only one having these moral questions, these moral
conundrums,
issues, right? It wasn't him. It was actually, even before they finished the bomb, there was already scientists gathering up behind him like, hey, man, this is bad. We should stop doing this.
Yeah, and they were telling him, like, you're the spokesperson for this. You try to convince them not to do it.
It was like, you are the only person that will convince anyone about anything, and you should be the one to convince them to stop making this.
Dude, and even like in the first act, and they're like explaining to him, who is it that's his like other physicist friend at like the college or the school.
Which one?
The one that like was telling him no politics.
Oh yeah,
he was telling him like, hey, like you are more important than like it's not just about you anymore. Like you're more important to humanity.
So I forgot his name. But he was actually the one that told the military, like, hey, he is the guy that you want to go to build this weapon.
Like in real life or like,
both.
Did we see that?
No,
but I'm saying, like, did we see it in the movie?
Yeah, we saw it in the movie too.
And while you're looking that up,
right,
if you're enjoying this conversation, you guys, again, hit like, hit subscribe. We're trying to get to 70 subscribers, maybe 75. Just subscribe.
Please,
we beg you.
Like and subscribe. So the actor's name is Josh Hartnett, and he plays Ernest Lawrence. And Ernest Lawrence was actually the first scientist at UC Berkeley to produce the particle accelerator.
Okay.
So he wasn't a theorist, he was the actual researcher, as opposed to Oppenheimer. He was a theorist. He was a theoretical physicist. And so he was already having conversations with the government about building the bomb, right? And we see it in the movie. He keeps telling him, like, Oppenheimer, you gotta remove the politics. So communism was a big thing there. And Oppenheimer, although he wasn't necessarily a communist, he was involved with them, right? His younger brother was a communist,
right?
And he would bring Oppenheimer to the parties, and so
he was banging communist girls.
Communist girls.
I didn't realize he was a womanizer. He was a little piece of shit.
He was. So Lawrence was the one that told Matt Damon's character, Leslie Groves, I think it is, the general or commander, or I forgot his actual title. He was the one that told him, like, hey, Oppenheimer is the one that you want to get on top of this project. Like, he is the one that could deliver the atomic bomb.
That scene is so good too, when he's just like, hey, like, I've heard like such and such about you. Like, it's all like negative things, and then as soon as Oppenheimer starts talking to him, and he's like, well, I get why they say those things about you, but like he like earns his respect, and he ends up choosing him for the job.
But then later we find out that he kind of also chose him because of his political ties.
Right, yeah. But then even
later on. Right?
Yep. And I wanted to mention that too. Like, I love Matt Damon's character.
So good.
Because
He's
Matt
really
Damon's
smart.
awesome. Yeah, but not only that, like, does he play a little game of his own, he is looking out for him too. And he was like telling him, like, oh, like you shouldn't have talked to who is like Colonel somebody.
Posh, I think.
Damn. Are you just good with names? Like, did you remember this from yesterday?
I remember a little bit.
Okay,
I'm
bad at names.
I just had to.
Played, and I think he was a colonel, right? I thought
no. So he was. His job was to look for possible Soviet spies, right? And so in the movie we learned that his dad was actually like a Russian. Something like some kind of Russian person, and this guy hates communists apparently. So it
almost like played it out like he's like a communist assassin or something.
It's crazy.
Like
that. That scene was wild. So Matt Damon's character is telling Oppenheimer, like, he's like, dude, do you know who you're dealing with? Like, this guy has publicly said to the FBI, like, I am gonna interrogate any communist or any person that I think is a communist and do it with the Russian way. And then like, okay, so what are you gonna do with him afterwards? He's like, I will deal with him the Russian way.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh shit, like, oh, this guy's a fucking killer or whatever.
And which he is played by Casey Affleck too, which is Ben Affleck's brother.
Mm-hmm.
And he's so good. The only thing I think I've seen him in, I've seen him in like, I think he's in Good Will Hunting. He's just like a side character. He's not even important at all.
Mm-hmm.
But he's really good in Manchester by the Sea. That's what he won his Oscar for.
I haven't seen it, but I do know about
depressing.
it.
If you just want to be sad, but see a good, like you want to see some acting, some good acting, but you want to, feel sad too. Manchester by the Sea, really good. But yeah, as soon because I was like, who is it going to be? Because they're playing it up like it's going to be this big reveal. And then I was like, oh shit, like Casey Affleck. They have, and that was after they just revealed like 20 other people throughout the movie.
There was like a span of like 10 minutes where it was like a new character every day.
I mean, like we knew Josh Peck was in there. But like Josh Peck shows up, Dane DeHaan pops up, and then Rami Malek pops up. Just it was just like
so many.
Boom,
it just kept
boom,
going.
boom.
Yeah. I forgot what we were talking about. Communist. His background, I guess, right? And Matt Damon. And
what a tense scene too, like of him just interrogating them and like getting the information out, and
he's trying to fight it too. Oppenheimer's trying to fight it, but
he's a good guy, like like he's trying to look out for his people and be like, okay, honestly, I did do this, but you don't have to worry about them. Like
and
he's like,
you're pushing him, and just like even just by looking at him in like silence, he's getting him to talk.
Yeah,
and it's so good.
There's so many scenes like this too, and then the score. Let me find out who it is because it's no longer Hans Zimmer. He's been working with
someone else.
Yeah, he's been working with someone else. But man, I mean, it's a Nolan movie. The music's going to be incredible, but it hits so good. It builds up those scenes so well.
It was tense. The guy next to me was like pressed against his seat. I was like, bro, you good?
He's in the person behind him lap and shit. Ludwig. Oh man, I'm gonna mess up that last name. Göransson? Ludwig Göransson?
Mm-hmm. Ludwig Göransson.
I tried my best, Ludwig, if you're listening. But I mean we can move on as well.
Mm-hmm.
Let me see if I have anything else for you. I mean, I know for sure one of my last few questions here was going to be, what did you think of the third act? Because it does then kind of turn into a different movie. Not like so out of left field, because they are putting the interrogation, like the court case.
Mm-hmm.
They're sprinkling it in the second act. But in the third act is when we're, all engines go. This is where the story's at now. How did you feel how now that the bomb's done, now we're dealing with this for an hour?
I thought that was my favorite part.
Really?
Because that's when things got really tense. Like that's when
for
you
me,
see.
I was most tense on the second act. Like
really?
Even though I knew the bomb was going to be made, which again is genius for Christopher Nolan to make me feel this way. But it's because,
So the way I saw it is that once the bomb dropped, it's like, okay, here comes the ramifications, right? Here comes everything that you have to deal with from doing this. It was an incredible achievement for science, but it was also really bad for humanity itself. Not just because of the destruction it was used for, but because of what it could be used for later on with like better improvements or whatever.
And we only see America's perspective, where it's like we're just trying to hold all that power now and use it to intimidate everybody else.
And it's super greedy.
Yeah, I mean,
freaking Truman.
I was just about to bring up to the
Truman.
point where this man goes up to the president.
Well, he gets called up to the president. President Truman.
He goes up to the most powerful man in the United States, and he's like telling him like he's almost like having a therapy session. So like he's been dealing with.
Okay, so give him some context. Okay, so like Truman's like, oh, like you achieved this great feat. Like how do you feel? And Oppenheimer's like he's struggling, right? He's like. He's trying to hold it, and he's trying to give him like a better answer that he wants to hear. And he's like, honestly, I feel like I have blood in my hands.
That's what he said. Yeah.
And the President Truman, this motherfucker,
he takes out his little
handkerchief, and he's like,
he doesn't even say anything. He just gives it to him.
Gives it to him.
Cry more.
He's like, cry more. And then I'm gonna butcher this line, but he says, the people aren't going to remember the maker of the bomb. They're going to remember the person who dropped it.
Yeah.
So he's like, stop.
Well, oh, no. This is what he tells them, too. He might say that as well, but he says, like, this wasn't about you. He said, I dropped the bomb. Yeah. Or it was my call to drop the bomb. So he's taking credit for it. So the one thing he has to hang on to is that this was a great scientific achievement. And then the president kind of just takes that away from him, where it's just like, no, I'm going to be remembered for this, not you.
Not
Which makes sense, you know, because like for me, I know President Truman. I didn't know who Oppenheimer was because again, I'm not like, I'm bad. I understand, like I'm at fault too, but it just goes to show, you know, how dirty it is. Like he got his hands dirty, he got his hands bloody.
Right.
Just doesn't matter.
It doesn't.
And then they try to discredit him going forward.
Yeah.
And he feels so guilty because I did like the third act. I think just overall the movie was just, we could have trimmed a little bit of fat. It could have been like 2 hours, 40 minutes. Probably, yeah. And it's easy to say that when you're not making the goddamn movie. And it's easy to say that from right here when I'm not Christopher Nolan, who can do whatever he wants.
Yeah.
Like I wasn't like bored or anything. I was engaged the whole way through. I don't even know exactly what I would cut out, but I don't even know if you could. That's the thing. Like I haven't even thought about it like that.
Like I said, to me, the third act was when I was like the most tense, where I was like, "Oh shit! Like this is getting real." Like here comes like the bigger picture, right? Because there's a bigger picture. The bomb was just a part of it. It was just a piece in the puzzle, and kind of just to kind of add a bit more into that scene, you know, like Oppenheimer is leaving, like the other guy that's there with the president and Oppenheimer is like, he escorts him out. And Truman's like, get that crybaby out of here. Like, I don't want him back here. Like, you know, like, kind of showing. He
says like, get that baby out of my office or something like that. Yeah. It's like, why are you being a bully?
Like, he's being a dick.
Like, you could have sent him away and he has to go away. Why are you like taunting him on the way?
Yeah, it's funny.
One thing I really want to shout out.
Okay.
Is Emily Blunt.
Oh, yeah.
Because she doesn't get to shine in this movie until the third act. Because everybody's like, she realizes the game that's being played, and so does Oppenheimer, and so does his lawyer. They all realize the game that's being played. I'm not going to try to explain because this is probably the most complex stuff. Is the third act with like all the moving parts and political advantages. Everybody's like, you know, it's just a lot. And we're not going to explain it, and it's a spoiler section anyway, so they should know.
Right.
But they're messing with Oppenheimer in like they're using people against him to like maybe they get a benefit out of it.
Robert Downey Jr.
Robert Downey Jr.
Lawrence.
Is
he's the
spearhead. He's like, we are going to discredit this man. We're going to ruin his whole life. And they know it.
Yeah.
Well, at least Emily Blunt knows it, and maybe even the lawyer. Like, but she's saying like it's what's his name? Strauss? Robert Downey Jr.
Yeah, Strauss.
She's like, it's always been Strauss. Like, why can't you see it? Like, I know you know that. Right. Why are you like, you know, why are you taking all this? Like, you're letting them go on record and destroy your reputation. And like, she's the one that says it too. Like. She's realizing that he thinks that by taking this as punishment will then make him not make him feel better, but then maybe
the way she puts it, why are you letting them turn you into a martyr or somewhere around those lines? And it's just because he's just like
he's just taking it because he's taking it because he thinks he has to, and he thinks that they'll forgive him. I think that's what she said. That you think they'll forgive you?
Yeah. I think in part is because he's just like, you know what, I have to deal with it because I created this.
Yeah.
You know, it's just like, this is what I have to deal with.
He's shaming himself. He's getting stoned. He's just allowing it to happen.
And by the way, this all happened because Strauss thinks that Oppenheimer made him look bad to Einstein.
Ego.
Einstein. Yeah, it's just pure ego. And like it all adds up. And then at one point, you know, Oppenheimer, like he talks down on him at like this big meeting of scientists.
But what was the point of that? Because they told him to do that, right? Like that was like a political move.
Yeah. So I think they were already kind of onto him. No. I remember now.
Because he was trying to discontinue the H-bomb.
Because he wanted to become the chair of the Atomic Energy Commission.
Strauss.
Okay. Right. So this is like when he first when he was making fun of his topic, which is isotopes or something like that. I can't remember exactly.
Years ago.
Yeah, this was years ago. And like he just could not let that go. So he was like, I'm gonna find a way to like bring Oppenheimer down. And then when he wanted to become part of the cabinet, some kind of government position, and that's when all that the judge courts or whatever, they were meeting and they were having all that. It was basically the third act.
Yeah.
Where they were in court and whatnot. And actually, I don't even think it was a court.
Well, it
was a hearing. It was a hearing.
For Strauss or for
both?
Well,
for both.
Oppenheimer, it wasn't a court for sure. Because like they mentioned they didn't want it to go to court. But then for Strauss,
You see, I don't think that was also a court hearing because there was a bunch of people. There was like a bunch of
that's true.
Judges,
Yeah.
right? So if I remember correctly, they were still trying to determine whether he's a good candidate for whatever position he was applying for.
Okay.
I don't remember that part is very ambiguous, and it's kind of like
Because then at the end, like they vote and then they said no.
yeah, they said no, like you won't get, and then like the media.
Robert Downey Jr. was so good. Too.
He was so damn good. Yeah,
Everybody was, at least like the main role. I mean, everybody was good, but the main roles: Matt Damon, Robert Downey Jr., Emily Blunt, Cillian Murphy, all great.
They're all great.
Florence Pugh for the little bit that she was in, it was great. Anything else? Other favorite moments, characters, actors?
My other favorite moment would probably be just to kind of go off on the whole Emily Blunt. So she's also an educated woman, right? She didn't get to finish school, but she's educated, and throughout most of the movie, she's portrayed as a mother who's struggling with alcoholism and depression, right?
Right.
But she's very smart. She knows what she's doing, and then eventually, at one point, they bring her in to the hearing that they said, okay, so that meeting they were having with Oppenheimer was because he appealed his security clearance. So he was denied security clearance to work on the hydrogen bomb because he wanted to kind of prevent it or something like that.
Right.
So that was the reason why they were having that hearing with him, right? It was like a closed hearing, not official by law. But Robert Downey Jr.'s character, Strauss, he hired someone to kind of control that hearing. It was what's his name?
He did some Littlefinger shit, like some Game of Thrones shit, where he was like manipulating and he made this little like court, quote unquote, court happen.
Right. Jason Clarke's character, Roger Robb. He was a freaking asshole, and then eventually, at one point, Oppenheimer and his lawyer for his defense, they brought in Emily Blunt's character, which is his wife,
and they kind of set it up like, are you sure you want her to come? And then
and he's like, yes.
Oppenheimer's like, yeah, yes. like she'll do fine, whatever. And it looks like they're gonna manipulate her.
Yeah, like Rob, he moved in closer to like intimidate. He's like, I got this. Like it's over for him. I'm gonna. And
she looks
him.
like this sad little girl. Like she has her head down because he's asking her about her communist card. Yes. He's like, did you ever have a communist card? And she plays the game back so well, or she's like messing up.
Shut him down so well. She's like, "You're not asking me. Like you are. I can't answer that because the way you're phrasing it is gonna prosecute. It's gonna affect me regardless of my answer.
Yeah.
So how about you rephrase it?" And he just won't. And she's just like, "I'm not gonna answer that until you rephrase the question."
And then when he would try to trap her, she'd be like, "Yes." She's like, "Or was it?" No, maybe.
So at one point he asked like, "Oh, how many years since you did something?" And she goes, 16. And he goes,
maybe it was, I think 17. It was the card thing. Yeah.
And she's like, "No, just kidding, 18.
Yeah. And it's like the record is so screwed up now. Like you can't get anything. And she was just playing the game so well. Yeah. On top of that, we mentioned it earlier, but like Matt Damon, because he comes in and he kind of like, I'm not going to say knows what's going on, but all I know is that when Matt Damon had Oppenheimer's back when they were trying to
deny, they were trying to deny his security clearance.
They said like if these guidelines were in fact or in what's the word I'm looking for? Whatever, because like they made like new guidelines. I don't know.
Right. So they asked him if these guidelines were still in place when you were working on the Trinity test or on the Trinity bomb, whatever. Would you have hired him? And he
said, well, those guidelines weren't there back then.
And they're like, but with these, and he's like, no, I wouldn't hire him, but I also wouldn't hire any of the other scientists.
And then they're like, yeah, that's enough. and then his lawyer, I think, asked him another question, and then he said, like, I hope I didn't say anything to like whatever, like to like shame Oppenheimer, and he was like, pretty much having his back after that. He's like, I want the court. It wasn't a court, but he's like, I want the court to know this. And you know, he was clearing it up too. And like people that Oppenheimer's out were his friends were betraying him. And then Matt Damon's character, the one, I keep saying, oh, just Matt Damon. Matt Damon went in there and he had his back. So it kind of just shows like who's really loyal at the end of the day.
Right.
I mean, I guess we can finish off by like ultimately this movie, like when you just think about like the themes of the movie, Like what comes to your mind? Because like obviously it's a very human story about the evils of human, like almost like the worst sides of us. So did you pick up on anything or?
Picked up on a few things. I think there's a lot in this movie. There's a lot of things on here. But again, it's
like what was the point of the movie in your mind?
It was, to me, it was just like about like just the overall movie was a biopic, however you want to pronounce it, right? It was just a story of his.
If I hear you say biopic, I'm gonna lose my mind.
Doesn't matter, right? However you want to pronounce it, that's ultimately what it was. Now, that being said, are there like sub themes, like maybe something that you can get out of? Sure, you know,
because like stuff like that, like loyalty.
Loyalty.
Even though Oppenheimer wasn't loyal at all.
Yeah, I can't stop thinking about the Einstein thing though. So let me talk about that real quick.
Yes. Well, go ahead and send us home.
Yeah. So towards the beginning of the movie, we see Einstein, right? Eventually, we see Einstein, and we are seeing it through the perspective of Robert Downey Jr., right? And Einstein is by the lake. You've probably seen it in the trailer. And Oppenheimer, by now, I think he's acquainted with him. So he goes to say hi. And Strauss is walking towards them, right? He's kind of like
he's like kind of like easing like in. This like, man, what are they talking about?
He's the type of person, or he seems to be the type of person that needs to know everything. Like he needs to know everything that's going on. Like he has to be informed, right? And we don't know what Oppenheimer and Einstein talked about. But as Einstein is leaving, you know, Strauss says hi and Einstein just ignores him, right? And then we see that same scene later on at the end of the movie through the eyes of Oppenheimer. And their conversation was about the time that Oppenheimer, years ago, he brought him this equation to see what he thinks about it, whether it's right or wrong, you know, like is there anything that he wants to add. And basically that equation was one of the theoretical physicists, I forget his name, he determined that, hey, there's a possibility, although near zero, there is a possibility that when we use this bomb, there will be a chain reaction and all the molecules in the air, I think it's hydrogen, they're all going to explode. In other words, the entire atmosphere and this planet is going to fucking
set on fire.
Be set on fire, right? So there is this moral question that was lingering throughout most of the movie. It's like, will this happen? Like it's nearly zero, but not zero. And there's also a scene with Matt Damon and Oppenheimer where they're like,
before the bomb goes off, before they're going to drop the bomb.
He's like, so zero? No, nearly zero.
And he's like, what more can you expect from theory alone?
Yeah, what can you expect from theory? And he's like, well, a zero would be nice. And this is right before the actual test of the bomb. But anyway.
Oh, and that scene, oh my God, it's incredible. We don't have to go into detail because I like where you're going. Just go ahead. Go ahead.
I'm going, right? So then the conversation, right, they're just kind of talking about it. And by now, everything has happened. I can't remember. He was giving the security clearance, I think, and then Robert Downey Jr. He was prosecuted as the Soviet spy, or the one that helped the Soviet spy, and Einstein tells him, so I remember that equation. How could I forget it? And then they mentioned that chain reaction, and Oppenheimer says, well, I still think we set it off.
Well, is it Oppenheimer that says, or is it Einstein? I thought Einstein was.
It's Oppenheimer. Okay. That's why Einstein leaves kind of like depressed, because he realizes what he means by that. Yeah. And my interpretation of that was like, hey, we just created this weapon of mass destruction, and now every country is going to want that. And no, they don't want that. They're gonna get these weapons of mass, and they're gonna make them. And that chain reaction was a war, you know, and them eventually destroying the world itself. So he's just like, you kind of realize what he meant by that. Like, okay,
We're doomed.
we're doomed. Yeah. So I think that part was great.
Now, thankfully, we're not all dead yet, but our story isn't written. So,
Our stories.
all right, I think that's a good spot to end it. We're never going to hit on everything. It's a 3-hour movie.
It's an incredible. It's a really long movie with lots of good scenes. You know, I can't think of a bad scene. I can't think of a bad line.
That's the thing is like, even though like there was some stuff where like I had to eventually catch up to, not like terminology, but just I'm talking about story. Where I'm just like, okay, where are we? Because like it's paced different. You know, it's Nolan. Ultimately, I was engaged the whole way through, and
I felt like it was a pretty fast-paced movie.
I mean, I think after the bomb goes off, it did feel like I knew going into it because I had listened to a review, and they were like, oh yeah, like the bomb. They didn't say like the bomb, but they're like the climax happens 2 hours in, and then there's still 1 hour left. So I kind of just assumed.
I have one last thing to get out of my chest, but finish.
No, just so I think that helped me with the pacing was just like I knew like okay, after the bomb goes off, we're only 2/3 done, so like don't think it's all right, restroom break, nothing like that. Right. It was just like okay, I'm still in it, so I was engaged all the way through. Last comments is again cinematic. I'm not gonna say masterpiece. It gets thrown around too much, but cinematic,
visually stunning,
greatness.
Like
We've seen somebody at the top of their game.
One thing to get out of my chest, and we briefly talked about it earlier. And my second favorite scene, just because I thought it was funny, was when they were gonna test the bomb, right? And the character from the actor from The Boys, what's his name? I forget his name again.
Jack Quaid.
Jack Quaid. So Jack Quaid is playing the father of physics, Richard Feynman. And
the
those
father
of you who
of physics,
know,
that's
you
cool.
know. And the funniest, so he gets inside his car, right? And then one of the other physicists tells him, like, hey, you're not going to wear goggles to protect your eyes from
because they're handing them out to everybody.
And he's like, oh, I don't want them. He's like, really? He's like, yeah, the glass will it
blocks
protect me
UV
from the radiation. And I was just like, oh my God, dude. So this man is literally just his eyes looking
staring
at
a bomb that has never been blown before. He's just like, no. The windshield blocks UV. I'm good.
Yeah. That's the last thing. I thought it was great. I thought it was funny.
That's nice. You ended on a good note.
Yeah.
We were going to end on a depressing note, but cinema, baby.
Cinema.
Once again, my name is Gabe. This is my friend Misael. Until next time.
Thank y'all for staying around.
Bye.
Peace.